Hey YouTube, so in this short video, I'll be speaking about how you can take incredible photographs with the Vivo X300 Pro. Now, please note that this does work with the X series, Vivo X series, the X100 onwards, since the camera app is very similar for all these smartphones. It can work with the Ultra, but there are some additional options available in the Ultra. But basically, the layout and the settings are 80% identical across all three of these platforms, so you can use them across all three. And so let's just go into the video now. Now at first here I'm on photo mode and I want to talk to you about what photo mode is for. So for shooting things like birds or even for macro, you can use the regular photo mode. And if you want to shoot your pets, some animals, birds, and maybe flowers and things like that, a plant that you find really beautiful, or for a regular frame, the regular photo mode looks incredible. And this is kind of like the default mode which you get to when you open the camera, and it is really good for all of those situations. There is an AI that will be working in the background trying to recognize what you're trying to shoot, and it will make some corrections depending. So if you take a photo of a singular animal, let's say a dog, it will automatically apply bokeh for that photograph. So that depends on how the AI interprets the image, and 90% of the time the AI has a good interpretation. But now there are certain other situations, for example, landscapes. When you're trying to shoot landscapes, it wouldn't be the best method to use the regular photo mode for landscape. And so for that, you actually have a totally separate section called landscape and night. And so if you're trying to shoot landscape, and even for night photographs, you can use this section here. It does night photography also works with the regular photo mode. It automatically defaults to night when it's too dark. But you have to use this if you want to get stunning photographs. So by default, you have these two settings, Zeiss Vivid and Zeiss Natural. Zeiss Natural will give you a bit of muted colors, but if it's really bright, the colors will look natural. And if it's not that bright, you have to use Vivid to kind of boost the colors to make it look kind of natural. So in this situation here, it's plenty bright. The screen which I'm trying to shoot is plenty bright. So the Vivid mode kind of oversaturates the colors and it looks artificial. So here I'm using Zeiss Natural to get that actual color reproduction. And you also have textured mode. Textured mode kind of adds textures. So if you're trying to add sort of character and oomph to the photograph, you can use textured mode. But for landscape specifically, this is what I do to get good photographs every time. So if I'm trying to shoot a landscape, I select a good frame and then I'll select either the atmosphere or the soft mode. I come to landscape and I select the atmosphere or the soft mode. So Vivo has really worked hard on their um, AI in the image processing AI. So the landscape and soft mode really brings out the colors. It makes the sky look incredible, and the overall photograph looks very scenic and extremely eye pleasing. But in the regular photo mode, you can't get that. But if you want to get a normal photographs and two of these enhanced photographs, this is what I always do if I'm trying to shoot landscape. I'll take one photograph with the same frame, same zoom on the photo mode, and then I'll switch to landscape and night, and I'll take one photograph with the atmosphere and the other with the night. Now, both of these, atmosphere and night, depending upon the scene, will give you different types of photographs. And you kind of have to compare between the three and figure out which one looks the best, which one looks the most eye pleasing. Atmosphere won't work for every situation and soft won't work for every situation, so you kind of have to take three photographs and then scroll past the all three and figure out which one looks best for you. And that's kind of how you have to approach landscape photography on the X300 Pro, because you really have to understand this is not a DSLR, and it's a smartphone with way smaller sensors, way smaller aperture. It does not have variable aperture, and even for the bokeh and the blurring, it depends upon artificial blurring to make it look like a DSLR photograph. So there is no point in you trying to use this as purely a point and shoot camera. You kind of have to experiment it a little bit more. It's a pro camera, right? And the camera app, they have really put in a lot of work in the camera app, so you kind of have to use all these settings that they've provided in order for you to get the best photograph. Now, it might seem like a hassle, but it's well worth the hassle. Next, I'll talk about night photography. Next, we'll talk about night photography. And so, for night photography, regular night photography can be done using the normal photo mode, and the AI on the camera will automatically recognize that it's night and it's too dark, and it will switch to longer exposure times. But if you want a different color profile, or if you want your photograph to have a particular character, and you're trying to shoot a very particular type of scene, let's say you're trying to shoot a park, a fair that you've gone to that is lit by neon lights. For that, you have to use the cyberpunk filter in the landscape at night. And if you're trying to shoot a scene where you have colder light tones, but you want that warm golden color with the dark background mixed in, for that you have to use the black and gold. And black and gold kind of works even if the street lights are colder now. So previously we had halogen lights which looked incredible. Now we have these LED lights which look too cold and they kind of ruin the aesthetic. So you kind of can get that old character back by using this filter here. And then you have another mode called green and orange. So that's kind of for like sunset sort of situations, to give the image that specific character which you're looking for without going to Lightroom and then editing the color profile later on. Even with the default camera app, you still can get 90% of the way there. It's pretty incredible. And for night photographs, depending upon scene, I take photos in all three of these modes, and then I look for which one fits the scene the best, and I use that photograph. So with this, you kind of are sure to get an incredibly stunning photographs. You really don't need to edit it later on. You don't have to spend much time on it. You can shoot the photograph in this modes, figure out which one looks the best, and you can directly upload, and it'll be a social media worthy image. So that's all about night photography on the device. For regular night photography, you can use the normal photo mode and you will still get a good photograph. And you can even switch to the pro mode, but the pro mode requires a whole video on its own because it's a pretty vast array of setting that you have, and that requires a video of its own. So for the purpose of this short video, I'll not be explaining what pro mode does and how it helps. So that's about night photography with the Vivo X300 Pro. Now to talk about some additional settings that you find in the landscape and night mode. You actually have a Zeiss perspective correction mode here. If you go into the setting, you have a pano mode for panoramic photographs. You have a mode for high resolution landscape photograph. You only need to use that if you plan on zooming in and cropping in the future. Otherwise, you can keep it in the regular mode. So that's it depending upon the situation. So you have a miniature mode, which is kind of like how a dolly zoom effect would work, but it doesn't work all the time. It only works some specific amount of times. So you kind of have to fiddle around with the settings, take multiple photographs of the same subject with different types of background and all that to kind of get the best photo. So there is an generative AI mode here in this section of landscape and night, and I don't use that because I don't want an AI image. I want the best image that looks natural and that looks the best. So I don't want to edit it too much. I don't want to spend too much time after taking the image. I want to find a good frame and I want to click it, and then I want to post it, and I don't want to make a fake image, so I don't use the generative AI mode. So here you can see I'm switching between the three filters that they've provided, and for this scene here, it's kind of bright, so the night filters look kind of weird. You have to use nuance and you have to use your common sense and to figure out which mode will work for what type of situation. And next we have the portrait mode here. So portrait mode, you don't have the regular zoom option. You have 24, 35, 85, 135 mm. So all of these are how regular portrait lenses have their millimeter numbers. So 24 is 1x, 35 is 1.5, 85 is 3.5x, and I guess 135 is 5x. I'm not exactly sure, but depending upon what you're trying to shoot, you can select the zoom, and depending upon the person, if you want a close-up of his body, of his face, then you can go with higher zooms, and if you want the background or the scene to set the tone for the photograph, you can use the lower zoom numbers, the lower millimeter numbers. And since it does not have variable aperture, um, you kind of have to use the aperture value sparingly, because if you use very small aperture values, you will have overly fake background blur that makes the image look sort of like a cutout. So you kind of have to adjust. And next, for filters, you have a plethora of filters for portraits. And these, I really don't need to tell you anything, because the representative images themselves explain the whole deal. So depending upon what you're trying to shoot, you can change these filters. It's a sad thing that you don't get this in the regular photo mode. It only comes up in the portrait mode. And also next, you have the lens flare. You can change the type of lens flare that the image has. You can add fake lens flare. And if you already have lens flare in your image, if the image is lit from the back, if the subject is lit from the back, you will get lens flare. And you can control what type of lens flare you get. And these are how the Zeiss lenses come with lens flare. So you have to use different lenses to get different type of lens flare for Zeiss. But with your smartphone, they'll artificially generate the lens flare for you. And even if the subject is not lit from the back, if you want artificial lens flare, you can use the option called lens flare to add artificial lens flare to the photograph. So I really don't do that, because that artificiality kind of comes through in the final image, and I don't want the image to look artificial. So I leave it on natural most of the time, and it depends upon what you like. Next, for the aperture values, so use anything close to 4 or 5.6. Anything higher and the portrait won't have that blur, and anything lower and it looks like a cutout, it looks artificial, because yes, they do use AI and ML algorithms to get the image to look the way it does. So it naturally looks like a cutout if the background blur is too high. So you kind of have to adjust. Next is the pro mode. I really don't want to go into detail about the pro mode, because the pro mode requires a complete video on its own. Otherwise, I can't go into the full depth of the pro mode. It's incredible that we get all this control on this camera, and you can do a lot with this, but it requires a video on its own, a 20-minute video on its own. So I'm going to leave that section here, and we'll move on to the other sections. So next you have snapshot mode. So for snapshot mode, I kind of use that for fast moving objects, and I don't use it often. So you have to use nuance here. So for snapshot mode, you have to use it in a situation where it's pretty bright and the subject is very well lit. In that case, snapshot mode, for fast moving subject, you'll get good photographs. For example, for squirrels and for kids playing in the field, or some sort of sport that you're trying to shoot. So for example, if you have people playing volleyball, you can use snapshot mode if it's bright to get a good photograph. Otherwise, you have to shift to the photo mode and take a burst shot, because snapshot mode kind of increases the shutter speed a bit too much for my liking, and because of which you don't get all of the light inside the sensor, and for that reason the colors look a bit muted, the details are not there, the image gets a bit noisy. So I tend to avoid snapshot mode unless the situation is really well lit. In most other cases, you can use the regular photo mode with burst to get snapshots. Next, in the regular photo mode, these are the settings that I turn on. The raw lighting I don't use most of the time, because I don't want to edit it. Most times I want the image to look as natural, so I don't do much post processing. So I leave raw lighting off, and I tune the colors using the filters that is provided. And the manual focus setting, it's incredibly necessary, because like this does not have a proper lidar sensor like the iPhone, so the focusing is a bit off sometimes, not always. And so for that reason, you require manual focusing. And these are the effect adjustments for the regular photo mode. I always leave that at off, because you can apply these same effects after you take the photograph, so you really don't need to do them before. And you get some filters in the regular photo mode. And the craziest part is, the regular photo mode is the most versatile, but it comes with the least amount of filters. It has an incredible filter set in the street photography mode. and they kind of have avoided that in this regular photo mode. I don't know why they've compartmentalized it so much, but you don't get those really good filters. You have vivid, textured, and natural. So you have to switch between vivid and natural depending upon lighting, and you can use textured if you want that artificial punch and that oomph to the image. So you have live photo mode, which basically takes a GIF. Then you have super macro mode, which gives you grids and switches to the 3.5 lens. So I don't use super macro all the time. I use it only if the situation demands it. I take my macros with the regular photo mode. And next we'll go to more, and in this section you have an option called as stage. It's for shooting concerts. Then you have an option called pano, that's for panoramic, and then you have ultra HD document, that's for scanning documents, and then you have high resolution, which you can access by going to photo mode and setting the resolution to 200 megapixels. And then you have the tele extender option. So if you have the tele extender kit with you, you can turn this on, and it will invert the image and it will zoom in quite a bit, so you can use the full potential of the tele extender. So if you don't have it, and if you plan on doing wildlife photography, or if you plan on doing birding, then the tele extender is an incredible thing to have for this device, because with the photographs that I've seen taken with the tele extender, it's as sharp or even sharper sometimes than without using the tele extender. So they've really designed the lens really well, and it's almost perfect for this. So yeah, that's what I have to say about the photography in the Vivo X300 Pro. These are all the settings that you can explore, and these are the basic settings that you need to know that will get you good photographs most of the time. And I'll make a dedicated video on how to use the Pro mode. So that's not really required as of now, because the Pro mode requires a 20-25 minute video on its own. So that's why I've skipped it. So this is how you can take good photographs on the Vivo X300 Pro. It's applicable to the Ultras, even the X200 and the X100 series. I hope you liked the video. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you next time, and please like and sub and comment what you want to see next.